This is what happened to every lost Toy Story character. Pixar gave us legends: Woody, Buzz, Jessie. But what about the others? The ones who fought, saved, but then just vanished like they never mattered. Well, this is what happened to them. Let's kick things off with the toy warlord of Pixar history, Lotso. Now, when we first meet this guy in Toy Story 3, he seems sweet. He smells like strawberries, he's got that southern grandpa voice, and he runs Sunnyside Daycare like a retirement home for toys. Sounds wholesome. Yeah, well, until he locks Buzz in a plastic prison and turns the toddler room into a real war zone. Lotso wasn't just bad, he was straight up evil, man. Abandoned by a kid, replaced by another Lotso, and turned bitter enough to rule a daycare prison. But here's the wild part. After that incinerator scene, where the toys almost get toasted,
Just push it! Push it!
Push it! Where's your kid now, Sheriff?
he could have redeemed himself. This was his shot to do better, to be better. But instead, he bails, leaves Woody and the gang to burn in hell. And what's his reward? Well, he gets tied to the front of a garbage truck by some random dude.
Hey, buddy! You might want to keep your mouth.
If you've ever seen plushies strapped to a truck like I have, you'll know he got what he deserved. He's going to spend the rest of his life strapped to the front of a truck, unable to move his arms or legs, getting mud and insects splattered in his face every few minutes, and stuck with toys he probably hates as his only company. He is rotting away since that's what happens to toys in bad condition. Towards the end of his time on the front of the truck, he will be nothing but a head with a little bit of silk and maybe one arm or a leg. So either Lotso will end up in an incinerator, or he'll end up buried underneath piles of trash, still alive but unable to do anything but hope for the sweet release of death to save him. So yeah, that's why he is never mentioned again. Not in Toy Story 4, not even a cameo. Pixar just dumped him, harder than Daisy dumped him back in the day. Smelled sweet, turned sour, lost forever. And so, our next missing Toy Story character is the little classroom on wheels who always showed up with a perfect digital voice and nailed every single spelling bee in Andy's room. You remember Mr. Spell, right? In Toy Story 1, Mr. Spell is the smart, self-waddling, helpful toy with a digital screen. He even sings. In Toy Story 2, he shows up again, organizing seminars and helping Buzz decipher LZTYBRN on a rescue mission. Super organized, always polite, always useful. This guy was the essential. And then, just like that, he's gone. No explanation, no farewell scene, no off to college montage. The dude just vanished by Toy Story 2, never heard from again. The theory is that he was among the toys donated to Sunnyside Daycare and was then taken home by Bonnie. Maybe Bonnie's family didn't have much love for a spelling-based sidekick. This theory is supported by the fact that he appears briefly in Forky Asks a Question episode.
Gotcha! Come on in, Mr. Spell.
You really fooled them, Forky. You can read but pretended you could not.
When Andy's mom delivers Andy's toys to Sunnyside, Bonnie's mom says that she hasn't seen her in a long time, implying they most likely know each other because of the donated toys. In the flashbacks of Toy Story 3, we never see Mr. Spell alongside the other support characters when Andy plays with his toys, because Mr. Spell had no playability for an older kid at the age of 10-ish. That's why Mr. Spell got donated. So, he's not dead. He's likely living in Bonnie's toy box, alive in the world, luckily, just off camera. However, a Toy Story character that quietly disappeared more recently is Chuckles. the sad clown from Toy Story 3 who just decided to never show up again. Chuckles gives us one of the most touching backstories in the franchise. He was once one of Daisy's toys, forgotten and left behind. The moment he tells Woody and the gang about how he was abandoned,
"Yeah, I knew Lotso. He was a good toy, a friend."
that was his moment. But when Toy Story 4 rolls around, Chuckles is gone. Not a flash of color, not a background walk by, nada. He's completely gone. He was one of Bonnie's toys, but he was nowhere to be seen. Where did Chuckles go? I would probably say it's because of Bud Lucky's, Chuckles' voice actor, his death. Pixar tends to retire characters of deceased voice actors as an out-of-respect movement, likely because Pixar sees the performance as inseparable from the character. Or maybe he just went back to live at Sunnyside with Big Baby, now that it's been reformed. Or he was still on the windowsill in the kitchen like he was in Toy Story 3. However, even if he is lost in the Toy Story universe, Chuckles will never be forgotten. Our next character is one you should all still remember. Yes, I'm talking about Whezzy, guys. Whezzy wasn't just any squeaky toy. He was the reason Toy Story 2 happened. When Woody finds him stuck on the dusty shelf, Wheezy's basically gasping for breath. His squeaker's broken, his spirit's crushed, and he's just waiting to get tossed in the trash. It's heartbreaking. And when Andy's mom grabs Wheezzy for the yard sale, that kicks off the entire plot. Woody tries to save him and gets snatched by Al instead. So technically, Wheezzy is the guy who started that wild airport adventure. By the end of Toy Story 2, he suddenly sings his lungs out on "You've Got a Friend in Me," like he's headlining karaoke night. Man, I will never forget that scene. But after that, nothing. No Wheezzy in 3, no Wheezzy in 4. Just vanished like he squeaked his last tune and rolled out quietly. The reason why Wheezzy never showed up again is probably because I think he is a dog toy. Andy liked to play with Buster with him until he broke, but he kept him anyway. That's why he had a squeaker in the first place, and why he hasn't been played with. The dog isn't attracted to him if he doesn't squeak. This also kind of explains Wheezy's depression. So, if Wheezzy was donated in the end, he also wouldn't have ended up in a family, which leaves me to believe he was put in a yard sale once again. A family probably brought him home thinking he was a dog toy for their, well, dog. And speaking of characters who popped up in early chaos only to disappear just as fast, Snake and Robot Shark. Man, you've gotta love them. Now, these two might not have had the biggest roles, but Snake and Robot Shark were definitely part of the early Toy Story Chaos Squad. You remember Snake. Green, coiled, quick to spring out of nowhere. He had that classic wind-up coil and popped up mostly when Sid was tearing stuff apart. And then there's Robot Shark, who looked like he rolled straight out of a 90s cereal commercial. Sleek, chompy, and a little bit terrifying.
I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Give me that.
Both of them are shown during the whole Sid's bedroom madness in Toy Story 1. They're not mutants like the other toys, but they're 100% stuck in that same traumatizing playroom. And after that, the theory is that since Snake's hinges and overall material seemed very fragile, and one step could break it, Snake was most likely trashed. He might have been physically broken inside that torture chamber, ending his toy life permanently. Shark, however, had lights, sounds, and value. However, I do believe Shark is most likely a bath toy or meant for other purposes like Wheezzy. Ironically, Wheezy's box says not suitable for water, but Shark, he probably ended up there. So Snake and Shark probably both didn't fit in the big kid toy box anymore. The next character made a big impact but dropped just as quickly. Who remembers Etch A Sketch? Now, this one hurts a little because Etch A Sketch was straight up useful. In Toy Story 1, Etch was basically the team's artist/surveillance system. Woody needed a wanted poster? Etch had it drawn faster than you could blink. He was also low-key hilarious, since he was always popping up with sass in pixel form. He came back in Toy Story 2, too, helping out with rescue missions and still sketching like a pro. But by the time we get to Toy Story 3, Etch is just gone. However, it turns out his absence wasn't random. Pixar confirmed in a press release that Etch was one of the toys donated between films. And in universe, it kind of checks out. Etch, being a more traditional, non-speaking toy, probably didn't hold Bonnie's attention like newer, flashier ones. What really stings me is that he didn't even get a goodbye scene. One minute, he's sketching maps. Next, he's probably chilling in a Goodwill bin. And since we are talking about blink and you'll miss it exits, yes, Lenny, the tiny blue binoculars who had the eyes of a hawk and the voice of a helium balloon. In Toy Story 1, Lenny was the go-to for recon. If Andy was coming, Lenny saw it first. If something sketchy was going down outside the window, Lenny had it covered. He even helped Buzz track Woody in Toy Story 2, proving he wasn't just cute, he was crucial.
Hit the dirt! Look, it's Woody and Buzz coming up fast!
But after that, just like his tiny legs, he couldn't keep up. By the time we get to Toy Story 3, Lenny's gone without a word. No flashbacks, no honorary mention during the Great Toy Purge. It's like the little dude blinked and just disappeared. The theory is that Lenny might have been sold at a garage sale, or maybe just got boxed away and forgotten. He was helpful, but probably not Bonnie's kind of toy. Still, for a pair of eyes that saw everything, it's pretty ironic that nobody saw him leave. Now, if there's one Toy Story character who went out with a bang, literally, it's Combat Carl. This guy was introduced in Toy Story 1 in the most brutal way possible. He didn't get lines, he didn't get a buddy, but he got blown up by Sid. We watched, horrified as I was, as Carl was strapped to a rocket, launched into the air, and exploded like fireworks on the 4th of July. And just like that, Combat Carl was gone. But here's the twist. Years later, Carl makes a comeback. Well, sort of. In the Toy Story of Terror short, we meet several versions of Combat Carl, including one voiced by Carl Weathers himself. There's even a hilariously underappreciated version called Carl Combat Jr., who gets snatched before he can even finish his introduction. So technically, Carl lives on, but just not the original guy. That version of Carl? Well, I don't think he survived that explosion, first casualty of Sid's toy apocalypse. And speaking of silent heroes who vanished after helping the gang, if you ever needed someone to lift a toy car or throw hands with a toddler, Rocky Gibraltar was your guy. He was built like a plastic pro wrestler, had a permanent flex going on, and looked like he could bench press Buzz and Woody at the same time. In Toy Story 1, Rocky helped break into Sid's backyard, and with launching the rescue mission, he was silent, but effective. And after that, well, we never saw him again. He didn't show up in Toy Story 2, didn't make the cut for 3, and there's no trace of him in Bonnie's room in Toy Story 4. No explanation. It's like he body slammed his way out of the franchise and nobody noticed. The most logical theory is that he was donated or boxed up during Andy's cleanout. He was either given away to Molly, sold, or put in the attic. Or he died when Andy sat on him with his giant ass. Either way, he was a wrestler. Most likely, he died prematurely, either way. The next character is one we can't forget. He is maybe one of the best characters in the Toy Story universe. Ah yes, good old Stinky Pete. Or should we say, Canceled Pete. He showed up in Toy Story 2 as the seemingly wise, fatherly figure from Woody's gang. At first, he seemed like a chill, quiet collector's item with a beard that screamed, "I've seen things." But behind that bubble wrap, man, he goes full villain mode.
Okay, Woody, let's go!
Take that, space toy!
Stinky Pete didn't want to be played with. He wanted to be admired, behind glass, in a museum, forever. And when Woody decides he wants to go back to Andy, Pete flips. Totally flips. He sabotages the toys, locks up Jessie and Bullseye, and nearly derails the whole movie. Literally. But karma hits hard. In the final act, he gets stuffed into a girl's backpack by the baggage handlers at the airport. The girl loves Barbie and wants to give Pete a full makeover. Rough.
Hi, you'll like Amy. She's an artist.
And after that, not a cameo in Toy Story 3 or 4. He got the permanent timeout. He probably became the very decorated and enjoyed toy of the young girl we see at the end of 2. As soon as she decorated him, he was worthless to any museum. Since he was already without Woody, no museum wants him alone. He goes through stages of grief, and one day, he probably just accepts. The little girl grows up and doesn't play with him anymore, but he's such a work of art that reminds her of her childhood. So he sits on the shelf to enjoy her forever. He still got what he always wanted, in a roundabout way. We can only hope he was able to accept this way was a better outcome than living his life in a new-in-a-box state. Before we continue, I want to give you some quick spotlights to some toys who almost made it, but didn't get past the cutting room floor. Pixar has a history full of weird and wonderful ideas, and not all of them make it into the final Toy Story films. Some were fully designed, animated, even voiced, but ultimately scrapped. One of the more famous cut toys? Senorita Cactus. Yup, she was part of a deleted Toy Story 2 scene at Al's Toy Barn. Think giant pink dress, southern twang, and a lot of sass. She would have been a perfect toy rival for Jessie, but she never made it in. There were also strange concepts like Lunar Larry, the original design for Buzz Lightyear, back when he looked more like a disco astronaut than a space ranger. And don't forget the creepy, unused toy concepts from Sid's house that were just a little too disturbing, even for Pixar. Now, if you ever needed nightmare fuel as a kid again, Sid's Mutant Toys. They were tortured, stitched together survivors of Sid's surgeries in Toy Story 1. Legs with fishing rods, doll heads on spider legs, baby dolls on mechanical claws. Damn, guys, it even sounds like a living hell. And somehow, they weren't even villains. None of Sid's toys were. Even Babyface wasn't evil. Just innocent toys trying to survive Sid's demented creativity. They didn't talk, they didn't scream, thank God. They just wandered around in the shadows, fixing each other up and waiting for the next disaster. And when Woody finally snaps and pulls the talking toy routine on Sid, the Mutant Toys rise up like a horror movie army and scare that kid straight.
So play nice.
But after that, they vanish, never to be seen again. They weren't shown in Sid's trash truck life in Toy Story 3. They didn't appear in any flashbacks, shorts, or side stories. It's like they disappeared back into the cracks under Sid's bed and stayed there. Since Sid Phillips is a garbage man, he probably donated them to the thrift store. However, I'd like to think that after being mentally scarred by the toys talking and ganging up on him, Sid went into a rage and destroyed every toy in the house. For all those years, Sid was in and out of psychiatric institutions. The young man's mental state only deteriorated. His anxiety made it hard for him to maintain relationships and steady to work. One day, he felt a note that read, "The toys are alive." Well, the rest I leave up to you to fill in. So maybe they got left behind. Maybe they found peace. Either way, these DIY creepers never came back. From full freak show to a barrel of straight-up goofballs. Ah yes, we're talking about the Barrel of Monkeys. One of the most chaotic and yet lovable background squads in Andy's room. In Toy Story 1, they were used for all kinds of toy emergencies. Need to form a chain to rescue someone from falling off a shelf? Barrel of Monkeys. They were the toy version of a SWAT team, but much more bendy. And, let's be real, everyone tried and failed to actually link all of them together without dropping at least one. They popped up again briefly in Toy Story 2, but 3, they were completely MIA. Not even a pile of limbs in a corner, just gone. Since the Barrel of Monkeys is actually a game, the monkeys may have been put in the attic or were sold sometime between the events of the second and third. Still, for a toy that defined teamwork, they sure got dropped without warning. And about the next chapter, you may have blinked and missed him. Roly Poly Clown was part of Andy's original toy squad. He's that classic round-bottomed, wobbling clown toy that never tips over. You can spot him bouncing around during playtime scenes in Toy Story 1 and 2, but he never speaks, never gets a moment, and barely even gets screen time. Still, he was there, wobbling his little heart out in the background. He appeared for the last time at the end of the film when the toys reunited to listen to Wheezy's performance. But after that, poof, gone. No sign of him in Toy Story 3, and definitely not hanging out in Bonnie's room. However, if you pay close attention, he makes a hidden cameo appearance at the end of Monsters. Near the end of the film, when Sully and Mike are walking through the scare floor, you can spot Roly Poly Clown chilling among the equipment. If you blink, you probably miss him, but he's definitely there. This cameo is classic Pixar's way of saying, hey, the worlds are connected. So even if he did vanish from the Toy Story storyline, he didn't entirely vanish from the Pixar universe. So Toy Story might be about friendship, loyalty, and holding on, but behind the scenes, sometimes it's kind of brutal. Pixar doesn't always give straightaway answers, but if you piece together interviews, movie clues, and theories, patterns form. Most of the characters, like Etch A Sketch and Wheezy, were probably donated, sold, or thrown away. Others might have ended up at yard sales or the attic, and for a few, their fate might just be a mystery forever. Even if Pixar moved on, we sometimes haven't. Because some toys were more than background extras. They helped shape the world of Toy Story. So here's to every lost character. Gone? Maybe. Forgotten? Never.